Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. We're going to start with our latest drought monitor map today. So this was released last Thursday. A couple things I'd like to point out here is still most of our drought is anchored in the western plains, in the south and southwest, and over toward the western part of the United States. We have seen regional places here in the Midwest develop some drought, so there's some parts of the Corn Belt that are struggling, and then we need to take a closer look at what's been going on over here in parts of the Carolinas. First, how about a quick zoom in on what we're seeing here? So as we just kind of take a look, we do have some drier regions, of course, that are out here in the Atlantic coastal plain, but as we get in toward the Piedmont and up toward the Appalachian Mountains, a few places are dry as well. I'd like to show you, as I normally do, let's go here, and click on the change maps. I like this one. So over the last week, we saw some improvement, though, as we approach the coast, but it's been getting a bit drier just in the most recent update as we head toward the interior. But over the last couple of months, just take a closer look here at how drought has changed across the country. This is an important map to take in as we move forward with this forecast, because while we're looking here at an 8-week map, I'd like to show you the 2-week map. This one really just represents what's happened since we started to make this transition into summer. And by the way, tomorrow, the 21st, is the summer solstice, which means we'll officially be into summer at that point. Now, what you've been looking at here is the last 2 weeks of precipitation compared to normal, so it's a percent. And despite some of the storms we saw at the end of last week, there are still a lot of places in and around North Carolina that have missed out on some of the recent precipitation. As we go through this video, take note of the central and lower Mississippi River Valley. Look at parts of Texas, throughout parts of the western Corn Belt and the plains here in the upper Midwest. And the reason why I stress these areas is because this upcoming forecast is going to start to reveal some pockets of pretty intense and pretty quickly developing drought. You'll see what I mean when I show you these temperatures and precipitation patterns in a few moments. So we need to bring in better rains for these areas, and I do have some good news for the coast as we head on out here into the week 2 time frame. We'll get there in just a second. But quick rewind of last weekend. This was on the 17th. Very large complex of storms moved out on the 17th, producing nearly 800 reports of severe wind. And we can see those started in southern Illinois and Indiana, but moved across parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, and then spread throughout the Carolinas, as far south as Georgia and as far north as Virginia. So this was last weekend's, on the 17th. That was the severe weather reports. Just wanted to bring those to your attention. What we got out of that in terms of rainfall early this morning is shown here. So yeah, severe weather, but some places completely missed. Look at this, missed that rainfall entirely. All right. Now, a couple of things to take note of. This week, the storm track will be through the Canadian Prairie over toward the Canadian Maritimes. There will be a strong southwestern monsoon that's going to continue to feed this. But ridging is going to start here and move in this direction. And that's going to be very important for the transition from the week 1 precipitation pattern this week into week 2. And I'm going to get to that in just a few seconds. Maybe the easiest way to kind of look at this is to look at this map. Now just take it in. It's the probability, shown in color coding down here at the bottom. It's the probability of getting at least, it's the probability of getting less than 0.5 inches of rainfall. So what I wanted you to see here is that the probabilities are low here, meaning we've got better chances of rain. Where they're high stretches from Texas through the eastern Corn Belt. And then, of course, in the west. But this is very normal for this time of year in the west. So that's going to be the impact of that shifting ridge. We need to keep a very, very close eye on how that's all going to shake down. Here's another way to look at it. We're going to start to see the hottest temperatures, which at times have been over us, start to slide in this direction. So we're going to keep an eye on that as well. This map shows you the next 10 days of temperature anomalies. So some of the heat we saw a week ago, and then of course it broke down over the weekend, which was fantastic. We do not expect to see a whole lot of temperature extremes in North Carolina as we press forward. That's the bigger picture, okay? Now before I get into some of those details, I'd like to expand this. I want to show you why. I'm going to show you the long range, and even got a new summer outlook, a couple of them to show you here. So let's first go to the upper level height pattern. This is today. So we have the deep trough in the west. We then have a big ridge that's running up right into Minnesota. That's why there's 100-degree weather coming into the northern plains. And here's the trough that came through us over the weekend that kept us cool. Now, as I play this forward, watch the evolution of this pattern. You notice that lows keep running through the Canadian Prairie while a big ridge develops here. And we're going to see the effect of that ridge in a few seconds. But this ridge is going to start to move. It's going to move this way slowly. And at the same time, keep an eye on Alaska. Now watch. As I go through Wednesday into Thursday and Friday, what do we see? We keep seeing trough sweep through here. The ridge is flattened there. And I'm starting to get a sense of a high over a low pattern setting up south of Alaska. Now, if this becomes blocked, okay, in other words, it sticks around here for 7 to 10 days, then that's going to have a major influence on the pattern. But it doesn't seem to really get lodged in place. Through next weekend into early next week, that high over low pattern, so here's the high and there's the low, is setting up the depth of this trough here. And why that trough is so important to watch is because of what it's going to do with a system just off the coast, what it's going to do to our temperatures, and how it pushes the ridge, which was once over parts of the Mid-South, here over the south. So all of that, I believe, is driven by this feature here and its effect on the downstream pattern. Now, it's kind of complicated, but that's what we're looking at. Then as we slide into the very last bit of June and on to July, the pattern just continues to favor something like this. So now our ridge axis is back farther to the west than it was originally forecast. And we start to say, what's kind of the cause of this? Why is the pattern going in this direction? I think a lot of it has to do with some of the momentum we've lost since late May in the whole global angular momentum equation. So this is telling me basically, looking from the ground all the way to the top of the atmosphere, how it's moving toward the east from the west compared to normal. We just lost a lot of momentum here in the northern hemisphere. So what that tends to do is it tends to bunch the jet stream up. It tends to get a bit more loopy, as you just saw, like that high over low pattern, the deeper downstream trough. That's what we tend to get out of it. And we can blame a lot of this on La Niña. And our La Niña is still very much present, even though you've seen some moderation in the ocean temperatures, which is typical of this time of year. All I care about is the strength of those trade winds. That's the atmospheric response. And the trade winds are still quite strong in this area. Now, that's going to be critical to the upcoming pattern. So while we're not watching any tropical activity now, we've talked a lot about that recently, keep an eye on the tropics over here, not for systems to develop, but the impact of those trade winds. Because as we look out over the next 15 days, so here's today, going all the way through the 5th of July, you see it. I've drawn this for you many times. See that column there? Again, this is today through the next 15 days. These colors represent strong trade winds right in through here, and that is a telltale sign of a La Niña. So it's going to continue to have that effect on the pattern. So let's take a look at the longer term, then I'll bring you back here to the near term analysis. Because if this is what's going on, this is how the month of July is looking in the models. So that particular setup is very much involved in the stronger southwest monsoon, the storm track going farther to the north, drier risks in the middle part of the country, limited primarily only to ridge-riding storms and occasional heat that pops storms up. But we tend to see along these coasts above average precipitation. Now, this is not from tropical systems. The model can't resolve those out that far. This is basically due to lingering frontal boundaries and storm systems that come out of the northwest across the region. So I know we saw earlier that some areas of drought have developed, and there are pockets, as I noted here, where things have been drier. But all indications going forward suggest that as we finish June, get into July, we have a better chance at seeing above average precipitation. Now you say, what could make that wrong? What could make this all wrong is if the Bermuda High or some other southeastern ridge begins to develop. And if that develops, which right now is not being well forecast, then stuff runs around the periphery of this. That's not typical when there's a La Niña, but that would be what would make this wrong. Okay, that would be what would make this wrong. So let's add to this another dimension. We had released late last week the new updates. Whoops, let's go back to that. Here we go. From the Climate Prediction Center. Notice that pattern, they now have this region, which is in drought, seeing drought improvement. You can see the colors here. Drought removal likely, drought remains but improves. We like to see that. Interestingly enough, they've extended a region here of drought expansion while they've got improvement where the southwest monsoon is kicking up. What I want to then do is I want to come up here. Again, this is cpc.ncep.noaa.gov, and I want to show you the new outlooks they've got for the month of July. Notice it's very similar to what the European model was showing. Better chances at seeing above average precipitation here with drier in the interior. So that's at least showing you some consistent behavior as we forecast the month of July here. What also was changed is the new 3-month outlook. So while we are expecting above average temperatures throughout this summer, which is normal, I mean, just to be a little bit above normal here, we do expect to see wetter than normal conditions. So what I have to say is at this point, given that there are no indications of a big southeastern ridge just taking over, that the likelihood of us maybe improving our drought situation or starting to see even above average precipitation, that's relatively high right now in North Carolina and surrounding states. We have more evidence too. This is the new update just released over the weekend showing you the what's called the IRI multi-model forecast. This is from Columbia University, looking at the temperatures here on the left for July, August, September, and the precipitation pattern on the right. Very similar to the CPC. If there's risk of drought, it's primarily the Western Corn Belt extending into the plains. We do not see that developing here just yet. So in addition to this, just a reminder, we are still forecasting an above average hurricane season. So we do need to be on the lookout for those systems, although nothing really in the next 5 to 10 days that I'm going to be watching too closely. So that's it. That's our long range update. Now we put that in the context of what we just saw lately. Let's go back into some of the details on the near term forecast. Today, we still have, again, remember the pattern? Deep trough here, big ridge there, and trough. So in the troughs, I have frost advisories. There's actually freeze advisories out here as well. But all this is excessive heat into this area. There's that southwestern monsoon giving us the flood. But over in the Carolinas, you just got to jump over the mountains, and you've got some air quality issues here. So if we took a look at the next couple of days here at precipitation, we do need to watch, keep an eye right here, possibility of some scattered rain coming out of the northwest, primarily overnight Tuesday, getting into Tuesday during the day. Highly scattered. See that? It's just kind of coming out of this direction, coming into North Carolina. That's about it. Now, if you notice, the storm track comes out of Montana and heads right along the U.S.-Canada border and sweeps the low through Ontario up into Quebec by the time we get into Wednesday. And it's after that point, I'm going to start to keep a very close eye just offshore, all right? So here's what I'm watching. We've already see the low here? It's going to move its way toward the Canadian Maritimes. And this is out to Wednesday, so very limited chances early in the week of some rain. When things start to shift around is Thursday into Friday. What you notice is we get this low pressure that starts to develop just off the coast. It's been in the models all weekend. And that low sits there and spins and likely interacts with fronts from a second system that comes through the Canadian Prairie and sets up over Quebec. You see the boundary here? So we have this low that's offshore, and then we have this system that curls up here, and maybe by Sunday increasing our chances of rain again. Other than that, though, I'll just kind of walk you back and forth. Scattered rain at best all the way through the next 7 days or so. All right? So what's beyond that? Well, here's week 1 versus week 2. Now you start to see the increased chances of precipitation here as that pattern shifts the broader ridge farther to the west. So near normal precip this week, a little bit drier than normal, I should say, closer to average as we get into week 2, which includes the week of the 4th of July. So we'll keep an eye on that. Temperature side of things as we wrap this one up. Here we go. This is Monday's high temperatures, so we're still getting the benefit of that trough, keeping us near normal today. As we go from Monday into Tuesday, a bit of a warm-up. Wednesday's probably going to be our warmest day. High in Raleigh, about 94, 95 degrees. Then as we play toward Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, the temperatures come back toward normal. Heat returns in the Midwest, triple digits out here in Central Valley of California. As we play on into early next week, that's Sunday's temps. Watch this. This is now a 5-day sliding window of temperatures. So you can see, as I showed you earlier, what happens as that ridge, which is here, backs up to the west. As we get out there day 5 through 10, we peel back the above average temperatures. As we keep going here, we see more often than not our temperatures are much closer to normal summertime temperatures. The heat seems to be anchored into this region. And that's the area that's missed out on precipitation. That's the area that I'm most concerned about drought development. I'm talking about the mid-south into the south and southwest. Southern plains, let me say that, because the southwest has got the monsoon going. But the storm track's north, and there'll be better rains running on the periphery of this. So that means we're going to watch as a nation for the risk of drought development in the midsection of the country with this heat and some of those places will miss out on some of those storms. So that's kind of the bigger picture I wanted to kind of keep you aware of here. All right. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Tell you all to have a good rest of your week, and I will talk to you next Monday morning. Have a good one. Thank you.